The CHP calls this a maximum enforcement period, so they have extra officers out there on the roads cracking down on drunk drivers. Now, we did talk to two people. They shared their stories of heartache and loss, and they hope that their message reaches even just one person.
It destroys a family. I'll never forget Sean. Our family changed. Our whole family changed. His parents changed. Everything changed.
Melanie Nava Pulley lost her husband, CHP officer Sean Nava, back in 2000. A drunk driver hit and killed him while he was investigating an earlier DUI crash on the 5 in Carlsbad. At the time, their two young sons were just children. Today,
The youngest one just graduated from college in May. He should have seen that.
she took part last night in a DUI checkpoint in Carlsbad to try and educate the public. Across the state, the number of DUI arrests is higher this year compared to last year. In 2018, during the holiday weekend, there were 685 arrests in California. This year, the number has climbed to 717. In San Diego County, however, the numbers are down. There were 60 arrests last year and 40 this year.
When you drink and drive, that will not be tolerated.
CHP officer Mark Latulip knows all too well how DUI drivers can tear apart families. In 2017, his cousin, his cousin's wife, and his cousin's son died when they were hit and killed by someone driving drunk.
I'm raising a 10-year-old that has lost her mom, her brother, and her dad to a drunk driver. She lives with me because of a choice that somebody else made, and drinking and driving is a choice.
Two families with the same message.
And if I can prevent just one person, or these officers can prevent just one person from getting hurt or dying, then it means everything.
And last night's checkpoint also recognized CHP officer Stephen Linen, who was killed by a DUI driver back in 2001 in Encinitas. The CHP says it cannot stress enough just how many options there are out there to get home safely. Take a Lyft, take an Uber, just have a plan to make it home safely.